Welcome to Mid-Century Living, your weekly nostalgia podcast about the best of technology and culture from the mid-20th century.
Welcome to episode 29 of Mid-Century Living, the show where we talk all about the best of the mid-20th century and how to add vintage vibes to your modern life. We're your hosts, Jackie
and Gonzalo. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the mid-century house, I'm really excited to talk about. But before we get there, Jackie, how was your week?
You know, I bet I have a ton of interesting stuff to say if it were actually a week from now. But alas, we're recording this on April 6th and all the cool stuff hasn't happened yet.
Do you have any meals prepared for Eclipse Day?
No, I don't have anything other than an outfit. I have nothing planned for Eclipse Day.
Oh.
Though I did see a lot of, there's a local pizza place near me that I've never been to, but they're doing little, Eclipse cookies. But you have to eat in the restaurant on Eclipse Day to get one of the Eclipse cookies. And I don't know if I want to commit to that. But then I was kind of thinking about, maybe just making them on my own. But I'm a little baked out after my little lamb cake marathon that I did last week. But I'm wondering if maybe there are any, Eclipse cocktails, something that's less of the time suck.
I'm sure you can find an Eclipse cocktail.
Like a black and tan would be kind of like...
Do you have, silicone... Oh, man, you should get this. Silicone, ice molds, to make ice cubes, but, in the shape of, stars and, half moons and stuff. That would be kind of whimsical and fun.
That would be
I don't know where do you find those. I don't think, siliconeIcetrays.com is a thing.
I mean, I do have some, half circle silicone molds from when I attempted to make Starbucks egg bite copycats. And I have a silicone ice mold that looks like the Death Star when it's done, but that's not, it's semi on topic, but not quite on topic.
Just because it has the word star in it does not make it on topic.
Maybe Stars and Suns. I bet I could find some stuff. I've got a little bit of time. I can go shopping.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking some kind of layered cocktail where it's a dark rum and then a light something, or a Maro and something. I gotta do some Googling, I bet you. So next week, stay tuned and see if I did anything fancy for the eclipse.
Come up with a recipe for a cocktail.
Yeah, I'm thinking a layered lowball glass, that would be kind of cool. And way less time used than baking something, which I'm a little over. I need a break. How about you? How was your week?
So to keep on the food chat, because it wouldn't be our show without food talk or food chat, I have a food topic I want to talk about that involves my week, but it's very disappointing because I meal prep for all my food, which means that on the weekend I will make all my food for Monday through Saturday. And then it's in Tupperwares, and then all I gotta do during the week is grab Tupperware 1 and 2 every day, and then go put it in my backpack, and then go to school. But that means that whenever the food is lackluster, I'm stuck with it for a week. Mm-hmm. And this week, I made what I thought was a healthy meal that was gonna be delicious using red lentil pasta, and it was so not good that I ate the first one on Monday. And I was like, oh, I have to eat this all week long.
Sad.
I was so disappointed. I still have one left because I still haven't had lunch today. And I'm like, do I really need to eat it? The answer is yes, because I'm hungry. And I don't have any other food in the house except for a bag of saltines.
You own saltines?
You don't own saltines?
No, I don't get the stomach flu that much. Why would I buy saltines?
What do you eat with your meals?
I don't. I eat the meals. I don't need accessories.
Growing up, we always had a little tiny basket, and there's at the table there's always been saltines, and my parents buy unsalted saltines, which is just crackers.
Yeah.
But there's always saltines at the table. Wow, I did not know people did. I thought that was a regular thing everybody did.
I know that normal people have bread or crackers or something with every meal, but because I'm not normal people and I try not to eat carbs at dinner, I just don't have that kind of accoutrement around the house.
But you don't eat like a whole sleeve of saltines. You eat one or two. All you do is like, oh, I got a little bit of like, I don't know, rice left in my plate. I'm gonna use the saltine to scoop it onto my fork, and then I'll eat that. And then the saltine got a little bit of like food on it, so you're just gonna eat it.
Yeah, the
I don't know.
Italian American version of that is using bread to like scoop the stuff onto your fork, like that's because then you get to eat it afterwards, and like the sauce that you use to like get back onto your, like, that's the whole point. I get that that's a thing, but I only buy saltines if I like have the flu.
Oh, I mean, okay. So let me preface the Italian side of my family. 145% does that. Fresh bread when there's pasta, because then you end up with like just sauce on your plate, and you use the bread and you squeegee the sauce into your mouth.
Yes.
But I don't know. I thought that people had saltines. That makes so much sense, because I had a roommate once who looked at me weird because I came home with like a can of saltines. It was like a big green cylinder tub. And it was like so many saltines in it. They were delicious. And I had them with my meals, and I always got weird looks. Like, what are you doing with saltines? I go,
it's definitely a
time.
regional thing, because I know like people crumble them in soups in certain parts of the country and like parts of the world, I would assume. But yeah, that's just bread is the equivalent in my family, and since I don't eat bread at dinner, I just don't have bread in the house either. Or saltines.
Well, go get yourself some saltines.
Yeah, I can't even remember the last time I had a saltine.
Apparently last time you had the flu.
Yeah, probably the last time I had the flu. Oh, so yeah, the red lentil pasta. I like it. I'm curious as to why you don't. Is it a texture thing or the flavor?
It was definitely a texture thing. The flavor also, I don't know. It wasn't bad. It was okay flavor. Pasta itself, unless you pasta itself tastes like pasta. I don't know how to explain it. The Italian in me is like it's pasta, but red lentil pasta just was off. It was not what I expected. I think. Plus, it also felt like I was eating cardboard.
Yeah, it's
not like flavor wise, but like it was like the consistency of cardboard. Not that I've eaten cardboard, people. I'm just saying that's what I imagine it tastes. It feels like.
Yeah, it is different. I don't know. I don't mind it. And that's interesting also because I feel like the last time we talked about your meal prep, you said that you made the exact same lunch every day.
Yes, I this is what happens when I try to like branch out and not eat chicken and rice.
Aw, what a shame.
So long story short,
too late.
I made pasta and I changed my meals, and I did not enjoy it, and I had to eat it because I'm a responsible-ish adult, and it's not fiscally or morally probably responsible to throw away food.
Well, I'm sorry that didn't work out.
It is what it is. You live, you learn, and then you go back to your regular habits.
I totally get that. Well, I guess now that we're all caught up, we should probably get on with the show now.
Yes, I think so too. So let's talk MCM House, a mid-century modern house. Quick disclaimer though, this episode is more of a deep dive into like the topic of residential MCM houses, which we have covered a little bit on our podcast before. If you haven't yet, we recommend you guys go out and check out episode 9, the mid-century modern design, for a general overview of what MCM design is. Or was.
Indeed. And we also covered some of MCM architecture in general on the pod, right?
Yes. We did a little overview of MCM architecture in episode 12, the ins and outs of MCM architecture. So we recommend you go and listen to that.
So what makes a house an MCM house?
Well, first, it's got to be a house from 1950s, from MCM, from mid-century modern, right? That's like the first thing. But then it has to have been built following Second World War. They must also follow distinct modern design characteristics. And the MCM house has a footprint that is usually wide and low, meaning the house itself is not very tall. Typically a single story, although we do see some split level houses, and there's no concrete, pun intended, reason for the houses being typically one story. But you could argue that because the main concept of MCM architecture is a focus on form and flow, it leads into a single story flow as a floor plan, because that flows a bit more easily without having to add staircases and hallways and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, do all MCM houses kind of look the same then?
They all have shared characteristics. So generally, it's agreed that there's 5 distinct subgroups, although we're going to focus on the 3 main ones. And the following information on subgroups of MCM houses comes from a book I have on American vernacular architecture, and it is called A Field Guide to American Houses, and it is written by Virginia and Lee McAlester. But let's talk a little bit about the ranch house. So this was a style that originated in California and became the dominant style throughout the USA. And it replaced the compact style houses from the streetcar suburbs. Once people began to be more dependent on the car, we stopped needing to have this compact style neighborhoods, because those compact style neighborhoods promoted walking around, right? You need to go from the house to the streetcar in order to get to the city, right? That's what they're called, the streetcar suburbs. But the car becoming part of the neighborhood meant that the houses could spread out and have more space.
Yes, that is super interesting. And just FYI, listeners, if you want to learn more about the suburbs, we did a whole episode on it, episode 23, and we'll link that in the show notes.
Yes. Yeah, we definitely touched on the connection between the suburb and the car and how that led to the neighborhoods we know today. But back to the ranch style house. One-story house with very low-pitched roofs and broad, rambling facades. Asymmetrical floor plans were the most common and sometimes lacked decorative details, but often seen with shutters or porch supports that are meant to echo the past details of Victorian, Tudor, and later craftsman styles. Another style of the MCM house is the split level house, and these were more prevalent in the 1955 to 1975 decades. So this design can be adapted to either ranch, meaning detailed like a ranch style house, or detailed like the shed roof, which I'll talk about next. But the split level house often has some traditional decorative detailing and contains half-story wings and sunken areas, divided typically into 3 areas: the quiet living area, the noisy living area, and the sleeping area. And each can be in its own level. That's why it's called split level.
Mm-hmm.
The lowest level usually has the garage and the noisy areas like the family room. The mid-level contained the quiet living, and upper levels the bedrooms. And usually, if you have having a tough time visualizing split level, think about it like this: you walk into the house in the living spaces, right? So you walk into the house and you are in like the middle. You have the living, the kitchen, sometimes the family room, and somewhere along the house, typically towards the front, you have stairs that go down and up. So you go down to the garage or the basement, or a lot of times like the game room, like where the kids can go and hang out, right? And or you go up to the sleeping areas. That's usually how a split level goes.
All of my family in the Northeast have split level houses, and I always thought they were so cool.
Yes.
Where you walk in and it's immediately stairs. And
yes.
Yeah, I never really thought about it as like noisy areas and quiet areas, but you're totally right. Like if you choose down, that's the like game room where the big TV is and the garage and all of that. And then, I always thought those were such a cool design.
Yeah. Down here in Texas, there is sometimes split level houses, but they are fake because typically you have to go upstairs to a front porch to go into the house to then go back down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we're not allowed to dig down into the ground here, which is why we don't have basements either.
Yes, too much water. But the third style of MCM house is the shed style house, and that one's a style that came about in the 1960s, and you still see today in contemporary architecture. And this is a more contemporary interpretation of the modern style that started as an outgrowth of creative architects such as Charles Moore and Robert Venturi. And it is characterized by one or more shed-roofed elements, usually of moderate to high pitch, would dominate the facade and give the effect of geometric forms kind of all shoved together to create a house. Yeah, and the overall effect is bold diagonals, counterpointed shapes, and multiple massing. If you can think butterfly roof, it's the opposite of a butterfly roof. Because a butterfly roof typically is a low point that goes up towards the outside of the houses. So you have the angles going up. But in a shed style roof, you would have a roof going up and then like a vertical wall, and the house keeps going.
Yes, very cool. So, but even with all those different styles, there's some characteristics that can be found through all of them. So, you mentioned before that they all have shared characteristics. So, some of these shared characteristics are the strong focus on nature and space created to embrace the outdoors specifically. So, usually big windows to transition between indoor and outdoor. Lots of flat planes, lots of straight lines, usually seen from the outside with the flat roofs or these like diagonal roofs we were just talking about. There's a lot of asymmetry, so from the outside, the house is no longer symmetrical, which adds visual interest and curb appeal. And a lot of times they have sunken living rooms, which are my favorites, also known as conversation pits. That these actually became really popular during the 60s, apparently as TVs became a thing, because now they're becoming part of the house and they're designing areas around televisions. And so basically, conversation pits are a lowered floor area with seating, kind of like sunken living room is a good way to put it. So you have a step or two down, descending into a square pit lined with couches. And although the first sunken room can be traced back to 1927.
Hey, that's the first year U of H was a thing.
Yep, it sure was.
Sorry, I had to say it.
They really became a thing in the 1950s thanks to Finnish-American architect Eero Saarinen, who we've mentioned before in our MCM episode. We're a big fan of his on the pod. And unfortunately, these sunken rooms became or left style because people kept tripping over and falling into it, which makes it a hazard in theory, but I feel like that's honestly a personal problem. And
Hey. Some of us are not blessed with good balance, okay? And we fall over everything. Although I've always fallen over things and never tripped on air, unlike some people think. But yeah, so let's fall into the inside of the MCM house. So inside characteristics typically are very open, very airy, and open concept kitchen and dining rooms are much more prevalent. Often there's no formal dining room, and there are multiple ways in and out of the house. Again, connecting the inside with nature. Colors are typically muted but bold. Think mustard yellow, think burnt orange, rustic greens, rarely featuring white walls. And there's a lot of blending between public areas and private. So the living room and dining room blend into one major space. The kitchen sometimes also makes an appearance and becomes part of the whole. Maybe because of the increase in entertaining and it being more acceptable, quote, for the host or hostess to be seen doing the work of cooking, preparing, instead of having a live-in house servant do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So some famous examples, or well-known examples, I should say, of MCM houses are the Elrod House in Palm Springs, California by John Lautner, which we've talked about already in the podcast in our previous MCM architecture episode. So go take a listen. The Eames House in Pacific Palisades, California by Charles and Ray Eames, which we've also discussed. But some new ones, the Kaufman House in Palm Springs, California by Richard Neutra, which was made famous by the photo Poolside Gossip, which we'll link in the show notes. And it is a split-level house with classic open plan where the interior and exterior blend together. The Stall House, also known as the Case Study House number 22 in LA, California by Peter Koning, which is a hillside house and has these really nice panoramic views of the city through floor-to-ceiling glass walls. I'm sure you've seen in movies, whenever you think MCM house on the hills in California, this is typically what people picture.
Yeah.
The Glass House in New Canaan, Connecticut by one of my favorite architects, Philip Johnson, which is really just one out of 14 buildings on the property. And this functioned as Philip Johnson's residence until his death in 2005. And it is noted for minimal structure, geometry, proportion, and the use of glass to achieve transparency. So do you know where we have the majority of MCM houses in the USA?
Not for sure, but we did just talk about 5 different houses and 3 of them were in California, so that's my guess.
Yes, well, it's a good guess. Let's call it the mecca of mid-century residential architecture, meaning houses, is the West Coast, most of it in California, more specifically in Palm Springs. And the main reason is to do with the connection with nature. So MCM houses, again, tend to lend themselves to areas where one doesn't die from heat exhaustion when walking outside. So sorry, Gulf Coast.
Yeah. Though Palm Springs is a desert, so there's that.
Well, people say there's different dry heat versus humid heat. I don't know dry heat. I only know humid heat. So I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, that's true.
But talking about the West Coast and California and how that is like technology central kind of brings us into talking about today. So there's been a change in house buying. So MCM houses existed in the up until like the 60s, 70s. In the 80s and 90s, though, they kind of paved the way, those decades paved the way for people to raise and buy super-sized houses, right?
McMansions, I believe, is the
Yes,
term.
McMansions, this giant houses, big suburbs, right? But millennials, us, we seem to be more interested in older homes with character. And also, there's an added benefit that the MCM house offers a medium-sized footprint, which is better for a small family. They're often seen as more eco-friendly and sustainable than the McMansions of yesteryear.
So true.
And we mentioned conversation pits a little bit ago, but they are actually making a resurgence online, mainly during lockdown and during the pandemic, as we grew bored of being inside our homes and confined to our four walls. It seemed that we have rediscovered the charming old school aesthetics of conversation pits.
Yay, good.
Yes, they're coming back. Maybe it's due to wanting to find a way to be back with friends or hanging out, or maybe just not knowing what to do, resulting in discovering blogs about design. But there's been a definite comeback for conversation pits in the 2020s. So we have a DIY hack on making a faux conversation pit for your house. So you're looking for cozy and colorful, or maybe small and intimate places to hang out. That is the big takeaway from a conversation pit. So in order to do that, first choose a space in your house where you want a conversation pit to be. Cover the area with a floor mattress or a shag rug to segregate it from the rest of the room. Then take a low set furniture like close to ground sofas, floor cushions, fancy poofs. Arrange the furniture in an U or L shape and close it off by creating just two entry points. Next, you're going to add numerous cozy pillows and throws to level up your comfort game. Great if you want to add some color and texture to your space as well. Then place a small coffee table in the center of the pit to create a focal point. It will complete the pit and give you somewhere to place your cups when you entertain and have friends over.
Somewhere to put your fondue pot also if you're going full 70s in a conversation pit.
There you go. And last thing you're going to do is add the finishing touch by placing pendant lights or floor lamps around the edges, letting the warm glow fill the pit. To make it even more a real conversation pit, frame it with wooden railing and enjoy a truly exclusive lounge in your home.
That sounds fantastic. That is a really great idea. Obviously, this is not a real conversation pit, but unless you're building your house from scratch, it'd be really difficult to retrofit a conversation pit into your existing living room because you would have to step down into it. But
Yes.
All these tips about closing off the area and having limited entrances will still kind of give the vibe. So I think these are great DIY hacks.
Yeah, and it's a great DIY hack also if you're renting, right? Because you can make this in any space.
You sure can. That's a great idea.
So maybe you've bought an MCM house or are renovating a more contemporary house to look like an MCM house. So first things first, do your research on your house. Especially if you bought an MCM house and are renovating it, you want to know who the architect is. You want to know a little bit more about the area where your house is. Like, how did the MCM houses look like back in the mid-century, so that you can recreate it in a period way.
Right, yeah. You want to be period accurate for sure.
Yeah, you want to be true to the style. Because if you're starting a renovation project by just following trends, it might be the difference between a house that is inspired by mid-century and one that is an authentic mid-century house. Materials matter. Opt for brick and metals like brass and chrome, real wood. Don't forget the wood paneling, because MCM houses have real wood paneling.
I actually have seen that's kind of making a comeback. People are doing it horizontal now instead of vertical. But I think soon, if you happen to not buy a house that already has wood paneling, you might be able to put it back in now. So that's kind of exciting. Another thing about authentic materials and materials mattering, for the love of God, do not paint your brick. If you
Please,
didn't,
please do not break. Yes.
if it's not already painted and you're stuck with it, don't. It ruins the brick. Once your brick is painted, it's painted forever, and you can't undo that. So, especially if you're buying an actual mid-century house, please leave the brick alone.
My first house was a house that was built in 1979, I believe it was. So late 70s. And it had a really nice, really small living room, but it had a brick fireplace and it was painted white.
Aw.
My current house has a brick fireplace and it is natural and I love it.
Yeah, the exterior of our house, the brick was painted. I have no idea what color it used to be, but this was the right house for us, despite that one flaw. But it's, yeah, just if you have the chance to start from scratch and you haven't painted it yet, just know that you can never ever undo that decision. So please do not, brick is porous. The paint is in there forever when you paint it.
Yes.
So try
Yes,
not
yes.
to do that, please.
But speaking of colors, again, I know we talked a little bit about it, but stick with these following palettes. So a neutral color palette with natural or earthy colors fit in right, especially when you're bridging the interior and exterior. You want to blend darker and lighter warm grays with natural colors like copper or sienna. Other color palettes, you can stick to bold colors, but keep the walls neutral, just eye popping accents in bold. Orange, avocado green, bright yellow, think late Tupperware colors.
Yes. Our favorite Tupperware.
A retro palette which includes pinks, which pairs well with hues of blue. A light pink in top complement aqua blue very nicely.
Yeah.
And exterior, except for your brick, you want to keep mostly neutral. Grays, brown or beiges, sometimes white, but usually have a pop of color in like the door and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Which I guess brings us back to exterior spaces.
Don't forget these exterior spaces, right? MCM focus on that relationship between inside outside. They are extension of the interior spaces. So look for geometric shapes that integrate different materials like flagstone, slate, concrete, and wood. If you're renovating a contemporary house to look MCM, you can add doors to get spaces. So there's multiple exits into the exterior spaces. Things like sliding glass doors are pretty good way to bring that MCM aesthetic.
Yeah. There's a few home renovation resources that I think I mentioned before, but it's worth bringing up again while we're talking about remodeling your MCM home. So, one really excellent resource is makeitmidcentury.com. You can buy, they're actually producing authentic MCM materials and renovation kits right now. So, you can buy your sparkle laminate there for countertops. They have wall and floor tiles for bathrooms and kitchens, and they have garage door and exterior door kits that are very, very cool. So they're a great resource if you're actually kind of remodeling your house. And then if you're just in the research phase, retrorenovation.com is also great. They are no longer posting, so the website's archived, but it's still up. They're just going to leave it hosted on the internet forever. So if you're just kind of looking for inspiration, or you want to do some research, or if you want to see some like appliances and wallpaper and especially lighting, they have a lot of really good links to other websites that have true retro reproduction, old stock kind of materials, or they'll do, like they used to do, emergency blog posts where it's like, go to Lowe's and buy this light fixture because it looks right out of 1962. Like,
Nice.
so there you can at least kind of get an idea from there. And they also have a lot of whenever people remodeled their own houses, and Make It Mid-Century does this too, they usually send in photos like, look what I did thanks to your advice, and that's really great to see how other people are renovating their homes now. So highly recommend.
So yes, and now that we have given you guys a DIY list of things to do, props. If you create a conversation pit in your house, please, please, please send us a picture or tag us on Instagram at MCL Podcast because we want to see it.
Yes, we
But
sure do.
yes, but now that we've caught up to the present, it's time for our etiquette segment. So, Jackie, what do we have today?
So my etiquette segment this week is actually mostly inspired by my being so enthralled with nature right now because it's spring, and I know we were talking about indoors mainly in this episode, but since it's spring and beautiful out, I decided to pull from the chapter on entertaining out of doors from Amy Vanderbilt's 1957 book on etiquette. So this covers picnics, barbecues, and alfresco meals.
Ooh, interesting.
So also I kind of gathered she's a little sassy. I've mentioned that as a feature. She also apparently just makes fun of men a lot. I don't know. I kind of got that vibe from some of the comments she makes in these, so I left them in here. So in the section on picnics on your own grounds, she had this to say on barbecue grills. Quote, "Whatever it is, so long as it's fire, you can depend on the men to enjoy tending it." So anyway, so barbecues make it easier to entertain large groups at home, but as with buffet dinners, it is important to have a comfortable place for guests to eat the food. So she stresses that you have to make sure that you have an actual table and chairs for people to eat if you're having a barbecue. And she recommended, she says that you can go buy a heavy oak or walnut round table with extension leaves at a secondhand shop and rub it down, paint it, and waterproof it for an outdoors picnic table.
Oh,
I
interesting.
have never thought about doing that and need to do some Googling, but that would actually be a really good idea because patio furniture is not cheap.
I know, for something that's going to get rusted in 2 months from the
Right.
rain.
But if you actually can waterproof some thrift shop table, that's a really great idea. So I like that. For plates, she recommends only partitioned plates, either plastic picnic dishes or sturdy partitioned paper plates, which holds food safely and cuts down on table clutter by making it possible to put meat, vegetable, and salad attractively on one plate, which I think is funny that she stresses partition specifically because if you just slop everything down on a big open plate, it doesn't look as nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's another time where she's making fun of men. And men, I think, are more comfortable with such a sturdy plate. Like, what? Anyway.
Oh, Amy.
Like, you really need to make sure you have stable paper plates or the men won't be able to hold their food. Anyway. So, as for the food, so she also mentions that while the old standbys of hot dogs and hamburgers are perfectly acceptable, guests are usually grateful to be served something a little bit more substantial and party-ish. So some menu ideas for an outdoor cookout would be steak and baked potatoes, if the budget permits. Charcoal broiled chicken is another favorite, or spare ribs, Southern style, which can be prepared either outdoors or in the kitchen and then brought outdoors. She mentions, though, that chicken and spare ribs should be eaten in the rough.
Does she mean like with your hands?
She means with your hands. And
Okay.
that is my new favorite phrase, and I'm going to try to figure out how to incorporate that next time I go to a barbecue place.
Will you be serving this on the rough?
Finger food, including, of course, corn on the cob, is most enjoyable at picnics, according to Amy Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
So picnics away from home actually require special equipment. So you should invest in a basket and equip your basket with picnic silver, in quotes, because it would not actually be silver, plastic or aluminum plates and cups, a vacuum bottle, which I'm guessing is a thermos, a corkscrew and beer opener. Love that that's included. Waterproof paper bags for leftovers, which I guess now would be Ziplocs, and paper napkins.
Nice.
So that should all be included in your picnic basket, just to have at the ready. And then some menu ideas. This I've seen come up in a lot of my cookbooks, cold fried chicken. I think Betty Crocker has a recipe specifically for fried chicken that is meant to be eaten cold, which is, I've never done that. Have you ever done that?
10 out of 10 would recommend. Yeah. Cold fried chicken is delicious. I will say, it's to me at least, it's not like, oh, this is just amazing cold. It's just that I am too lazy to heat it up because I don't like microwaving chicken.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have leftover chicken like that, either fried chicken, which I don't really eat, but if I like grill out chicken or smoke chicken, I'd rather eat it cold than put it in the microwave because the other alternative is turning the oven on and chunking it in there until it warms up. And then that takes time. And whenever I want leftover chicken, I want it now.
You know, this means you need an air fryer.
I know, but my kitchen is small and there's no space for a deep fryer. There's not space for a deep fryer either, but I meant air fryer.
Also, yeah, I hear you're supposed to deep fry outside also, but yeah, well, that brings us back to our like outdoor entertaining. Some more cold food options. I like this one. She had little cold veal or ham pies, English style. So that would be kind of cute. And then also this other tip, she recommends chicken or potato salad, but in a glass jar, which you combine once you get to your picnic spot with lettuce that has been brought separately, which is genius and like maybe the kind of beginnings of the mason jar salad trend that was all over the internet a couple years ago.
I fell into that trend thanks to an image you sent me of how to do it.
I was really into it for a while.
Yes, I still have that saved in my phone because I'm going back to it in the summer.
Yeah, yep, when it's salad season for sure. So some hot food, she says that there's all sorts of good things that can be put in picnic jugs and served piping hot hours later, so this is where your vacuum bottles come in handy, so you could do spaghetti with mushrooms and chicken livers, if you hate yourself, or baked beans or fish chowder are her hot food recommendations, but I'm sure that there are modern equivalents of all of these that can be served in a thermos. I've also heard that you could like fill your thermos with boiling water and put like cooked hot dogs in it, and then it keeps them hot, and then you just like have the buns and stuff later, and you just sit out and eat your hot dogs that way. This I thought was interesting from like an environmental standpoint. So she says avoid lighting campfires when picnicking wherever possible, or if there are reliable woodsmen in your party. And another joke, who can manage a campfire so it doesn't smoke up the guests and ruin the food. Like, I'm reading all of these with her eyes rolling, but I'm not sure if that's... She does say that if you do cook with a campfire on a picnic, make sure every spark is extinguished with water or loose dirt before you leave, and obliterate all signs of your presence so that others may enjoy the woods or beaches you have, which is the leave no trace mentality, which I am grateful went back this far. I thought that was something new we were doing to try to clean up after everyone who was leaving their trash around, but apparently back in 1957, you were supposed to clean up after yourself as well.
Yep.
So that made me happy. And then the last outdoor eating tip is alfresco meals, which are less formal, have fewer courses, and more substantial courses than, say, like a formal indoor meal would be. So she says that a luncheon in the garden would be set out under trees or on the terrace table on colorful mats or a luncheon cloth with matching napkins. It does seem pretty fancy. Like, this is probably closer to your semi-formal dinner from last episode, just outside. So there's a first course of tomato juice or vegetable juice cocktail with crisp crackers before the guests are even seated. And then once they sit down, there's already arranged salads of chicken or lobster and tall glasses of iced tea, which are in place before the guests take their places. And then you're to clear the main course, perhaps onto a rolling tea table, before serving the dessert. And the dessert is served and passed by the hostess. She says on service, even where service is available, the host and hostess function informally in serving their guests, and servants are not kept constantly in attendance, otherwise it'll spoil the rural effect. I guess try to keep it casual.
Okay.
Even if you happen to have help around. So that is Eating Outside from 1957. Nice. What do you think?
I like it. I vote yes on all these.
Yeah, I think these all sound great. I love all of this too, which is why I included it in this episode. So I think that means we can approve them all.
I think so too. We will give it the MCL podcast seal of approval. And with that, it looks like we have landed the plane, guys. Thank you all for listening today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show and tell a friend.
You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. This is the best place to send us feedback and episode suggestions, so send us a DM anytime.
Yep. Thanks for listening, guys, and we will talk to you again next week.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mid-Century Living. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. See you next Friday.